Truck drivers have rules they never talk about, and every story you're about to hear started the moment someone broke one. I'd been driving trucks for almost 7 years, long enough to know that truckers don't scare easily. So when 3 different drivers warned me about the same route, I should have listened. It was late October, just after midnight, when I stopped at a truck stop outside Flagstaff, Arizona. The place was half empty, flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of diesel hanging heavy in the cold desert air. I mentioned to another driver that I was heading east through State Route 89A, cutting through the canyon instead of taking the longer interstate. He froze mid-sip of his coffee. "You're taking that road tonight," I laughed. "Saves me 2 hours." He didn't laugh back. Another older driver leaned over from the next booth. His hands shook as he spoke. "Doesn't matter how fast you drive," he said quietly. "If you see someone waving you down, don't stop." I thought they were messing with me. Some old road legend meant to scare rookies. But then the first guy added something that made my stomach tighten. "And whatever you do, don't check your sleeper cab if you hear knocking." I left 10 minutes later. The road started normal enough. Winding curves, tall pine trees, moonlight cutting through the branches like silver knives. My CB radio crackled with static, though I wasn't picking up any voices. About 40 minutes in, I noticed something strange. No animals, no headlights, no sound except my engine. It felt like the road was swallowing noise. Then, my GPS shut off, just black. I told myself it was a signal issue, but when I looked up, the mile markers were gone too. Not broken, gone like they'd never existed. That's when I saw him, a man standing on the shoulder. He was wearing a reflective vest, but it was torn and dirty. His arm was raised, thumb out, waving slowly, too slowly. Every instinct screamed at me to slow down. That's when I remembered the warning. If you see someone waving you down, don't stop. I passed him doing 60. As my trailer cleared his position, my CB radio exploded with noise. Not static, breathing, heavy, wet, close. Then a voice whispered through the speaker. "Why didn't you stop?" I slammed the radio off. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. A mile later I saw him again. Same man, same vest, standing ahead on the shoulder. Impossible. I floored it. This time as I passed, his head turned way too far, like his neck bent wrong, and he smiled. I checked my mirrors. He was standing in the middle of the road behind me, watching the truck pull away. That's when the knocking started. 3 slow knocks from inside my sleeper cab. I nearly lost control of the rig. I told myself it was cargo shifting, metal popping, anything but what it sounded like. Then the knocking came again, closer, right behind my seat. I didn't look back. I kept driving, hands numb on the wheel, whispering prayers I hadn't said since I was a kid. Suddenly, headlights appeared ahead. Another truck. I flashed my brights, desperate. As we passed each other, the other driver honked wildly. His window was down. He was screaming. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw his face. Pure terror. The knocking stopped. The road straightened. My GPS came back on like nothing happened. When I reached Sedona, I pulled over shaking, convinced I was going to find something in my cab. There was nothing. No marks, no damage, no explanation. At the next truck stop, I told an older driver what happened. He went pale. "You saw the walker," he said. "Some say he was a trucker who broke down years ago. Others say he's something older." I asked him why it knocks. He stared at the ground. "Because sometimes," he said, "it already got in and just wants you to know." I never took that route again, and to this day, when I'm driving at night, I lock my sleeper cab, just in case. I still remember the exact time because I checked it 3 times afterward, hoping I was wrong. 2:47 a.m. That's when everything went from uncomfortable to impossible. I was driving through western Pennsylvania, heading north toward Erie, trying to finish a delivery before sunrise. I'd already been on the road for almost 11 hours, and my eyes burned from staring into darkness, broken only by my headlights. The highway was nearly empty. No traffic, no radio signal. Just long stretches of trees and low fog creeping across the asphalt. That's when I noticed the truck. It was a black semi, older model, box trailer, no company logo. Just matte black paint that swallowed the light instead of reflecting it. No reflective tape either, which immediately struck me as strange. Truckers don't do that. Reflective tape is required. Everyone knows that. The truck was about half a mile ahead of me, drifting slightly within its lane. Not enough to be reckless, just enough to look tired. I remember feeling relieved. There's a certain comfort in seeing another vehicle at night. It makes the road feel real again. I slowed slightly and stayed behind it. At first, everything felt normal. The truck maintained a steady 55 miles per hour, slower than most drivers but not unusual for a heavy load. I stayed a safe distance back, letting its tail lights guide me through the darkness. But after 10 minutes, something started to feel off. The truck never braked, never sped up, never corrected its lane drift. It just rolled forward. I checked my dashboard clock, 2:47 a.m. That's when I realized I'd been following it for almost 20 miles. The exit signs had changed. The mile markers kept ticking down, but the truck never turned. No exits, no rest stops, no lane changes, just forward. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then the fog thickened. It rolled in suddenly, like someone had pulled a curtain across the highway. My headlights barely cut through it, turning the world into a narrow tunnel of gray. The truck ahead didn't slow down. That was mistake number 1. Most drivers ease up in fog. Visibility drops fast and animals are common out here. But the black truck kept its speed. I gripped the wheel tighter and considered backing off, but something about losing sight of it made my chest tighten. So I followed. That's when I noticed the license plate, or rather, the lack of one. The rear bumper was completely bare. No plate, no mounting bracket, no light, just smooth black metal. My stomach dropped. I told myself it had fallen off. Then I noticed something worse. The taillights weren't glowing. They weren't red. They were dark. Not off, dark, like they absorbed the light from my headlights instead of reflecting it. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. They didn't change. I reached for my radio. "Breaker 19, I said, my voice sounding too loud inside the cab. "Black semi heading north on Route 19, you copy?" Only static answered. I tried again. Nothing. The fog grew thicker. The trees on either side of the road began to look wrong. Too close, too tall, bending inward as if listening. I checked my mirrors. There was nothing behind me. No headlights, no glow, just fog. It felt like the world had narrowed down to me in that truck. After another 10 minutes, I noticed something terrifying. The road hadn't curved. No bends, no hills, no changes. Just a perfectly straight stretch of highway. That shouldn't have been possible in this area. I'd driven this route dozens of times. There were curves, sharp ones. I checked my GPS. The screen was frozen. The map showed me stopped on a straight line that didn't exist, with no town names, no road numbers, just a thin gray line cutting through empty space. Then the GPS recalculated, and recalculated again, and again, until the screen went black. That's when the truck's brake lights finally came on. I slammed my brakes instinctively, heart jumping into my throat. But the truck didn't slow down. Its lights were on, but its speed didn't change. They stayed solid, glowing darker than red, almost like deep bruises in the fog. I tried to pass it. I eased into the left lane, creeping forward. As I drew closer, I noticed the side of the trailer. No rivets, no markings, no grime. It was too smooth, like it had never been on the road before. Then I looked at the cab. There was no driver visible, no silhouette, no movement. The side window was completely black. I sped up, trying to get ahead of it. That's when the truck drifted into my lane. Not sharply, not aggressively, just enough to block me. I slowed. It corrected back into its lane. I tried again, same thing. Every time I attempted to pass, the truck shifted just enough to stop me, without signaling, without urgency. Like it knew, I backed off, my palms slick with sweat. That's when I realized something worse. The clock on my dashboard hadn't changed. Still 2:47 a.m. I don't know how long I stayed behind it after that. Time stopped feeling real. The fog pressed closer to the windshield, forming shapes that vanished when I focused on them. My ears popped, like I was gaining altitude, but the road stayed flat. Then I saw the hazard lights. The truck's hazards came on, both lights blinking in slow, uneven rhythm. I felt a surge of relief. Maybe it was finally pulling over. The truck slowed, then turned off the highway, onto a narrow service road I didn't recognize. I should have kept going. I didn't. I followed. The service road was barely paved, cracked and uneven, swallowed by trees on both sides. My headlights caught rusted guardrails and old road signs with the paint peeled away. The truck ahead didn't hesitate. It turned again, this time onto gravel. I hesitated, my tires crunching loudly as I followed. That's when the smell hit me. Rot, wet earth and decay, seeping through the vents. The truck stopped. Its engine shut off. The hazard lights stayed on. I stopped 20 feet behind it. The fog closed in, swallowing the road behind me. I reached for my phone. No signal, no bars. That's when the truck's driver door opened. The figure that stepped out wasn't right. He was tall, too tall, and thin in a way that didn't look human. His movements were stiff, like his joints weren't meant to bend the way they did. He didn't look at me. He walked toward the back of the trailer. I stayed frozen, my mind screaming at me to lock the doors. Then I heard it. A knock, from behind my seat. Inside the cab. 3 slow taps. I whipped around. Nothing. Another knock, closer, right against the back wall. I heard breathing, soft, steady, patient. The driver outside knocked on my window. I screamed. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember opening it. I remember standing outside my truck, fog soaking my clothes, facing him. His face was unfinished, smooth in places where features should have been. Eyes set too deep, mouth stretching too wide when he smiled. "You've been following me a long time," he said. His voice sounded like it came from inside my head. "I didn't mean to," I whispered. He tilted his head. "It's okay," he said. "Everyone does." He gestured toward the trailer. "Look inside." I shook my head. He smiled wider. "That's where you're going anyway." I ran. I don't know how I got back into my truck, but suddenly I was in the driver's seat, slamming the door, twisting the key. The engine roared to life. I floored it. The truck ahead didn't move. I tore back down the gravel road, branches scraping my trailer, fog whipping past like claws. The knocking followed me. Inside the cab, inside my head. Then suddenly, headlights, traffic, a highway sign. I burst back onto the main road, nearly sideswiping a car. My clock blinked. 2:48 a.m. 1 minute had passed. I pulled into the nearest rest stop and sat there until sunrise. I checked my truck. No damage, no scratches, no mud, but on the back wall of my sleeper cab, there were 3 dark handprints. I quit long-haul driving 2 weeks later. To this day, I don't follow trucks at night, and every time I check the clock and see 2:47 a.m., I slow down, because somewhere out there, that truck is still driving, and it hates being alone. I learned the hard way that there's a reason truckers have rules they never write down. Rules they don't joke about. Rules they don't explain unless they think you're already in danger. This is one of them. Never stop for a lonely truck on a dark highway. I didn't know that rule yet. I was 26 years old, barely 2 months into long-haul trucking, trying to prove to myself and everyone else that I could handle nights on the road. My route that week ran through New Mexico, a long stretch of highway cutting through empty desert between Albuquerque and Gallup. If you've never driven it at night, it's hard to explain how empty it feels. No towns, no lights, just black land stretching forever, broken only by the white lines slipping under your headlights. It was close to 1:30 a.m. when I first saw the truck. I remember because I'd just finished a call with my brother, complaining about how lonely night driving felt. The moment I hung up, I saw headlights ahead, low and dim, drifting slightly within the lane. Another truck. I felt relieved. Truckers don't like admitting it, but we hate being alone out there. Seeing another rig feels like proof the world still exists. I eased off the gas and stayed behind it. The truck looked old. Not vintage old, more like forgotten old. Faded white paint, rust creeping along the edges of the trailer, and reflective tape so worn it barely caught my headlights. The strange thing was how slow it was going, 40 miles per hour, on a highway posted at 75. At first, I assumed it was overloaded or having engine trouble. I considered passing, but the road ahead curved sharply, and the darkness felt thick, almost heavy. So, I stayed back. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The truck's brake lights kept flickering. Not braking, not slowing, just flickering, like a dying bulb. Every few seconds they'd blink on and off unevenly. I radioed out on the CB. "Breaker 19, white semi eastbound on I-40. You all right up there?" Static. I tried again. Nothing. No chatter. No background noise. Just dead air. That should have been my first warning. After nearly 15 minutes, the truck suddenly slowed even more. 30. Then 20. I checked my mirrors. No traffic behind me. I eased closer, preparing to pass. That's when the truck pulled halfway onto the shoulder. Hazard lights on. My heart jumped, a breakdown. I slowed instinctively, rolling past just enough to look. The cab interior was dark. Too dark. No dashboard glow. No movement. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to keep going, but I was new, stupid, and still believed people always needed help. I pulled over about 50 feet ahead and shut off my engine. The desert was silent. No wind, no insects, no distant traffic. I stepped down from my cab, the crunch of gravel sounding way too loud. The truck behind me stayed motionless, hazards blinking slowly, like a pulse. I walked toward it. The closer I got, the more wrong it felt. The air smelled stale, like dust and old metal. The truck's engine wasn't running, but the hazard lights still blinked. I knocked on the driver's door. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. "Hey!" I called out. "You need help?" The door creaked open on its own. Just an inch. My stomach dropped. I pulled it wider. The driver's seat was empty. No one inside. No personal items, no paperwork, no phone mount. Just a deep indentation in the seat cushion, like someone had been sitting there for a very long time. Then I heard it. A click. Behind me. I turned. The truck's hazard lights went off. At the same moment, my headlights, back at my rig, flickered. I suddenly realized how far I was from my own truck. Too far. The engine of the lonely truck started. I hadn't heard a key turn, hadn't heard a starter grind. It just came alive. The headlights turned on. They weren't bright. They were dim and yellow, like old eyes opening. The driver's door slammed shut. I stepped back. "Hey!" I shouted. "What the hell is going on?" The truck began to roll forward, straight toward me, slowly, deliberately. I ran. I don't remember how I made it back to my rig. I remember fumbling with the door handle, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my keys. The engine behind me revved. Too deep, too loud. I got inside and slammed the door. Just as the front of the other truck loomed into my headlights, I floored it. The road swallowed me. My truck roared back onto the highway, tires screaming as I accelerated. In my mirrors, I saw the lonely truck pull out behind me. No hazard lights, no turn signal, just headlights. It stayed close, too close. I pushed past 80, 90. It didn't fall back. That's when I noticed something impossible. The truck behind me had no driver visible. I could see straight into the cab. Empty. The steering wheel turned on its own. My CB radio crackled. A voice came through, low, distorted, layered with static. "Why did you stop?" I slapped the radio off. My dashboard clock blinked. 1:47 a.m. It hadn't changed since I pulled over. The highway signs stopped making sense. Exit numbers skipped. Town names repeated. Mile markers counted down, then jumped backward. The lonely truck stayed with me, never passing, never falling behind. Then I felt it. A vibration from behind my seat. A soft thump, like someone shifting their weight in the sleeper cab. I told myself it was my imagination. Then it happened again. 3 slow knocks from inside my truck. I screamed and slammed my fist on the horn. The road ahead dipped suddenly, plunging into darkness so deep, my headlights barely touched the asphalt. The lonely truck surged forward, pulling alongside me. Its window slid down. There was no face, just darkness. Then a hand reached out, too long, too thin. It pressed against the glass between us, and the knocking behind me stopped. I don't know how long I drove like that. Minutes, hours. Suddenly, headlights appeared ahead, real ones, traffic, a rest area sign. The lonely truck fell back. Its headlights flickered. Then it veered sharply off the road, disappearing into the desert without slowing. I pulled into the rest area and sat there shaking until dawn. I checked my sleeper cab. There were handprints on the wall behind my seat. Not dusty, not oily, pressed deep into the material, like something had been leaning there, watching. I told another driver about it the next day, an older guy with gray stubble and tired eyes. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "That's why we don't stop." I asked him what it was. He shook his head. "Doesn't matter," he said. "Some say it's a truck that never found its driver. Others say it takes them." I asked why it pulled over. He looked at me hard. "It gets lonely," he said, "and it doesn't like being ignored." I quit long-haul trucking 6 months later, but sometimes when I'm driving late at night, I'll see a truck on the shoulder. Hazards blinking, waiting, and I keep driving, because now I know the rule. Never stop a lonely truck on a dark highway. And if you ever do, make sure nothing knocks from behind your seat, because if it does, you're already too late.